You got me pregnant. Human now, we're having alien puppies. HFY Sci-Fi story. The alien training grounds shook with the sound of combat drills. Warriors clashed under a burning sky, their weapons sparking, their roars echoing through the mountains. In the center of the arena stood Commander Vela, the strongest warrior of her people, her skin glowing with bioluminescent lines. Her eyes sharp as fire. She had never lost a battle, never bowed to an enemy, and never shown weakness. But on this day, something strange happened in the middle of her training. Vela staggered, her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. The other warriors gasped, dropping their weapons, rushing toward her commander. One shouted, "What is happening?" Her breathing was heavy, her claws pressing against her stomach as pain rippled through her body. No one had ever seen her like this, not even in war. The medics rushed forward, scanning her with advanced alien devices. Their faces changed from confusion to shock, their voices trembling as they whispered to each other, "This is impossible." One said, "It cannot be true." Another replied. Finally, the chief medic stepped forward, his voice heavy. "She is pregnant." The words spread like fire. Every warrior froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. Pregnancy was rare for their kind. Their species reproduced through rituals and energy transfers, not like fragile mammals. And yet the scans were clear. There was life inside her, a new heartbeat echoing within. Her body, the warriors looked at each other in confusion, fear, and awe. But the greatest shock had yet to come. One elder stepped forward, his voice low. "If she carries life, then who is the father?" The arena grew quiet. Every eye turned toward Vela. Her body trembled, her eyes narrowed, and with great effort, she spoke one word: "Human." The silence exploded into chaos. "What, a human?" Warriors shouted. "Impossible!" Others cried. A fragile human, weaker than them, smaller than them, had done what no alien of her kind could. The strongest warrior of their people now carried the child of a human. The ground itself seemed to shake with the weight of the revelation. At once, guards were sent to the human encampment nearby. They dragged forward a soldier named Daniel, a human who had been living among them as an ally. He was young, scarred from battles, his armor worn, his face tired but determined. Daniel looked around in confusion as the alien warriors shouted at him. "What have you done, human? You have touched what was forbidden." Daniel blinked, completely lost. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice unsteady. The elder stepped forward, his words sharp as blades. "Our commander carries your child." "Human, explain yourself." Daniel's eyes widened in shock, his voice breaking. "What? That's not possible." The warriors laughed bitterly, their voices filled with anger. "Not possible. The scans do not lie. Human, your blood mixes with hers, and now life grows inside her." Daniel shook his head, his heart racing. He had fought beside Commander Vela, trusted her in battle. But this was beyond imagination. The air grew heavy, the crowd restless. The alien council arrived, their robes flowing, their eyes filled with fear. "This cannot be allowed." One counselor said, "It is unnatural." Another agreed. Some demanded the pregnancy be ended before it caused chaos. Others whispered that it could be a sign of destiny. A union between two worlds. Commander Vela, still weak, forced herself to her feet, her voice low but powerful. "No one touches this child," she growled. The council fell silent, her words carrying the weight of authority. Her gaze turned toward Daniel, her eyes burning. "This is your doing, human, and you will stand with me until the end." Daniel's mouth went dry, his mind spinning with disbelief. He had never imagined such a thing, never thought his life would be bound to hers in this way. But he saw the fire in her eyes, the strength even in her weakness, and though fear gripped him, something deeper stirred in his heart. He nodded once, unable to find words, but his silence was enough. The warriors whispered among themselves, what kind of child would be born from this union? Would it be a monster, a weapon, or something far greater? Fear and curiosity spread like a storm through the alien camp, and above it all, the title of the story began to form, whispered on every lip. You got me pregnant. Human, Vela said coldly, her voice like thunder. Now we're having alien puppies. The words struck Daniel harder than any battle wound. He stood frozen, surrounded by enemies, bound by destiny, and the galaxy itself seemed to tremble at what was about to come. Daniel stood in the center of the alien arena, his heart racing. 100 eyes burned into him. Alien warriors snarling, their voices sharp with accusation. He felt like prey surrounded by predators. His every breath loud in the silence. Commander. Vela, still pale, but standing tall, pointed toward him, her voice steady. This is the human, she said. This is the father. The words cut through Daniel like a blade. He shook his head quickly, his voice trembling. No, no, that can't be true. This is a mistake. The crowd roared with laughter and anger, their voices booming. The scans do not lie. Human, shouted one warrior. Our commander carries your child, cried another. Daniel's chest tightened, his thoughts racing faster than he could speak. How? How is this possible? He whispered. His mind fought to piece together the truth, but nothing made sense. He remembered battles fought beside Vela, missions where they had trusted each other, moments of closeness in the fire of war. But never had he imagined this. Never had he thought such a union could even exist, and yet the evidence was there, clear and undeniable. The alien council stepped closer, their faces grim, their voices heavy. This child is dangerous, one elder declared. It must not be allowed to live. Another said coldly. Vela's eyes flashed, her claws flexing. No, she growled. This life belongs to me, and no council will take it from me. Daniel's stomach twisted. He felt like the ground itself was falling away. How could he be part of something like this? How could he be responsible for carrying life into an alien world? He looked at Vela, her gaze sharp and unwavering, and felt a chill crawl down his spine. She was stronger than any warrior he had ever known, yet at that moment, she needed him. And that thought was heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. The crowd pressed closer, their voices rising like a storm. Kill the human, some shouted. End the pregnancy. Others cried, but among the chaos, whispers spread like fire. What if the child is a bridge between our species? One voice said, what if this is destiny? Another whispered. The arguments tore through the crowd, fear battling with hope. Daniel clenched his fists, his voice finally breaking free. I don't understand how this happened, but I will not run, he said. The words shocked even himself, but once spoken, they felt true. He turned toward Vela, his eyes steady. If this is real, then I will stay. Vela studied him in silence, her glowing eyes narrowing. For a long moment, she said nothing, only watching him with the gaze of a predator testing prey. Finally, she gave a small nod, her voice low but sharp. Then you are bound to me. Human, until this life is born. The words echoed across the arena, silencing the crowd. Daniel's confusion grew heavier with every breath. He had never asked for this, never imagined it. Yet here he was, accused, judged, bound to the strongest warrior in the galaxy, and somewhere deep inside, a strange question burned in his mind. What kind of child would come from such a union? The council stepped back, muttering among themselves. Some still demanded destruction. Others feared rebellion if they defied their commander. In the end, they could not decide, So they turned to Vela. The choice is yours. The eldest said, his voice tight, but if this child brings chaos, the blame will be yours and the humans. The crowd slowly dispersed, their whispers echoing like ghosts in the night. Daniel stood frozen, his body tense, his heart pounding. He wanted to scream, to deny it again, to run from the truth. But every time he looked at Vela, the words stuck in his throat. Because, deep inside, some part of him already believed. As the arena emptied, only Vela and Daniel remained. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. Her voice cold but steady. You are confused, human. But you will learn quickly, because now you are part of something greater than you understand. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice quiet. What do you mean? Vela placed a clawed hand over her stomach, her gaze fierce. I mean the galaxy will come for this child, and when they do, you will have to decide what kind of father you will be. Daniel's chest tightened, his mind spinning. He had survived wars. He had faced death, but nothing compared to this. He was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a human among aliens. He was now tied to something that could unite or destroy entire worlds. And though fear filled his heart, one thing was clear. His life would never be the same again. The council chamber was built from black stone and glowing crystals, its walls carved with the history of alien wars. Elders sat in high seats, their faces cold, their eyes sharp, their voices filled with power. It was a place where judgments were made, where destiny for entire worlds could be decided. Now Commander Vela and Daniel stood at the center, surrounded by guards, the weight of silence pressing down on them. One elder finally spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. This cannot be ignored. Our strongest warrior carries life created by a human. It is dangerous. It is unnatural. Another leaned forward, his face dark with fear. Hybrids could destroy the balance of our people. They could be monsters, uncontrollable. What if they turn against us? Murmurs spread across the chamber. Like ripples on water, Daniel's stomach twisted as he listened, his hands clenched. He wanted to shout that he was not dangerous, that this was not some curse, but his words caught in his throat. Vela stepped forward, her voice steady and unyielding. This is no curse. This is destiny. This life will be protected. Her eyes burned as she glared at the council, daring them to challenge her, but the elders were not so easily silenced. One of the oldest rose, his robes dragging against the floor, his voice trembling with age but filled with venom. Your pride blinds you. Vela, if this child lives, the galaxy will see us as weak. Already our enemies circle us like vultures. If they learn that our greatest commander carries a half-human child, they will strike. The chamber grew louder as the council argued. Some demanded the pregnancy be ended before it spread chaos. Others whispered of prophecy, of legends that spoke of unions between stars. Daniel felt his chest tighten with guilt and confusion. He had not asked for this. Yet now entire worlds debated his worth, his blood, his future. He could see the hatred in some of their eyes, the fear in others. To them, he was not a soldier, not an ally, but a threat in human form. Still, he could not look away from Vela, who stood tall despite her weakness. One counselor slammed his staff against the floor, sparks flying. Do you not see? This human has already divided us. He must be cast out or killed before his influence grows. Daniel's heart raced, his instinct screaming to defend himself. But Vela raised her hand, her voice sharp. No one touches him. He is bound to me, and he will remain at my side until the child is born. Her words silenced the chamber for a moment, but only for a moment. The elders leaned close to one another, their whispers like knives. If she defies us, the people may rise against her. Or worse, the armies may fracture. The tension grew thicker with every passing second. Finally, the head elder spoke, his voice cold and final. "Very well. If you wish to protect this child, then know this. Commander Value and the human will bear the burden alone. If the child brings chaos, if it brings destruction, the blame will be yours, and yours alone." The others nodded in grim agreement. The decision was not mercy, but a trap, one that left Vela and Daniel isolated as the council dismissed them. Daniel's mind spun with fear. He turned to Vela as they walked out, his voice low. "They hate me. They hate what we've done. How can we survive this?" Vela's gaze remained forward, her voice calm but fierce. "Let them fear, Daniel. Fear gives us time, and time is all we need." Outside, the whispers of the people spread quickly. Aliens pointed at Daniel as he walked through the streets. Their eyes filled with suspicion. Some muttered insults. Others shouted warnings. Human curse, they called him. But a few looked on with something else: curiosity, even wonder. The story of the impossible child was already spreading that night. Vela stood by a balcony overlooking the alien city, the glowing towers lighting the sky. Daniel joined her, his voice quiet. "They want us to fail. They want the child gone. I don't know if I can do this." Vela placed her clawed hand over her stomach, her eyes locked on the horizon. "You can, because this is no longer only my fight. This is yours too." Human, Daniel felt the weight of her words settle on him. He had fought battles before. But this was different. This was not about guns or ships or victory. This was about life. A life no one wanted, but one that might change everything for the first time. He understood the fear in the council's eyes. They did not fear a monster. They feared the unknown, and sometimes the unknown is the most powerful weapon of all. The nights on Vela's world were never quiet. Alien skies glowed with twin moons, and strange creatures howled in the distance. But on this night, the silence inside the fortress was heavy. Too heavy. Daniel felt it as he walked the halls. His senses sharp, his mind restless. Something was wrong. Commander Vela slept in her chamber, her breathing steady but strained. Her hand never left her stomach, the life inside her glowing faintly beneath her skin. She was strong, but the pregnancy was already changing her body, making her faster at times, weaker at others. Daniel sat near the door, his weapon across his lap, his eyes fixed on the shadows. He was no longer just a soldier. He was her shield. The council's words still echoed. In his mind, "If chaos comes, the blame will be yours," they had said. He knew enemies were watching, waiting for the chance to strike, and he was right. Because soon the fortress walls shook with a sharp blast. The alarm roared through the night. Daniel leaped to his feet, his instincts burning. Outside the chamber, armored figures stormed through the halls, their weapons glowing. They were not Vela's warriors. They were assassins sent by rival clans. Their orders were clear: capture Vela before the child was born. Daniel's heart pounded, his hands tightening around his rifle. The door burst. Open shadows filled the chamber. Daniel fired without hesitation, his shots echoing like thunder. 2 assassins fell, but more poured in, their alien blades cutting through the air. Vela stirred awake, her glowing eyes snapping open. Her voice sharp: "Protect the child." "Daniel," she commanded. Daniel stood in front of her bed, his body a wall between her and the intruders. He fought with every ounce of strength, his rifle blazing, his fists striking when the bullets ran dry. The assassins hissed, circling him like predators around prey. "You are only human." One spat, "You cannot stop us." Another snarled, but Daniel bared his teeth, his voice steady. "Maybe I'm only human, but I'm the one standing between you and her." The fight grew brutal. Daniel's body took cuts and burns, but he refused to fall. Every time he Staggered, he thought of Vela's eyes, fierce and unyielding, every time pain struck. He thought of the life growing inside her, a life that now depended on him, and so he fought. Harder than he had ever fought before, for once, not for victory. Not for orders, but for loyalty. Vela rose from her bed despite her weakness. Her voice roaring across the chamber. "You will not take this child," she growled. Her claws slashed through the air, her body glowing with bursts of strange energy. The assassins faltered, stunned by her power. Daniel seized the moment. Driving his blade into the last of them, sending the figure crashing to the ground, silence filled the room once more. Heavy and sharp, Daniel fell to his knees, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his wounds. Vela stood over him, her breathing harsh, her eyes burning with something he had never seen before. Not just strength, not just command, but respect. "You fought as if the child were your own," she said quietly. Daniel raised his head, sweat and blood staining his face, his voice low. "It is my own," he admitted. The words slipped from his mouth before he could stop them, but once spoken, they felt true. Vela studied him in silence, her sharp gaze softening for just a moment. The fortress guards rushed in, their weapons ready. They froze when they saw the bodies on the floor, the humans standing among them. Scarred but unbroken, whispers spread quickly. The human fought for her, he bled for the child. The story began to grow. And with it, Daniel's place. Among them shifted. Later that night, as healers treated his wounds, Daniel sat in silence. Vela approached, her voice calm but strong. "You proved yourself tonight, human. You could have run. But you stayed." Daniel met her gaze, his voice steady. "I gave my word. I'll protect you, no matter what comes." For the first time since this began, she gave a small, rare smile. "Then perhaps this child will not be born into fear, but into strength." Daniel leaned back, his body aching, but his heart strangely steady. He had been thrown into chaos, accused, doubted, hated, but tonight he had proven something to her and to himself, that he was more than a soldier, more than a stranger. He was part of something greater, something worth bleeding for. And though the night was quiet once more, the whispers of war still grew outside the walls. The galaxy would not ignore this child. Enemies would return, stronger and hungrier. But now, Daniel was no longer confused, no longer unsure. He was ready, ready to stand, ready to fight, ready to be the shield. The test of loyalty was over, and he had passed, but far greater trials still waited in the dark. The fortress wall still carried the scars of the midnight attack. Burned stone, broken halls, the bodies of assassins dragged away into the night. Daniel stood at the highest tower, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had fought, he had bled. But he knew the danger was far from over. Below, the alien city buzzed with whispers. The people spoke of the human who defended their commander. Some called him brave, others called him cursed. But no one could ignore him anymore, and no one could ignore the truth. Commander Vela carried a child. Half human, half alien. Word spread faster than fire, traveling through fleets, across planets. And into the ears of enemies, what was once a secret became a story carried by traitors, spies, and soldiers. The story of the forbidden child, the impossible union, the life that could change the galaxy. And soon, those who feared it decided they could not wait any longer. One night, the skies trembled. Stars vanished behind massive shadows. Warships, dark and endless, emerged from hyperspace. Blotting out the moons, their engines roared, their cannons glowed. The air itself vibrated with their arrival. The invasion had begun. The people panicked. Voices rose in terror. "They have come," they screamed. "Armies from the outer clans, fleets from our enemies. They want the child." Daniel raced to Vela's side, his weapon in hand, his heart steady despite the chaos. She stood tall, her claws flexing, her voice sharp and commanding. "Prepare the defenses. No one will touch this life." The fortress shook as the first bombardment struck. Flames lit the night, buildings crumbled, and the sound of war filled the air. Alien soldiers rushed into formation. Weapons blazing, but the enemy forces were endless. Their ships covering the skies, their warriors pouring down like a storm. Daniel fought at Vala's side. Every shot from his rifle, carving space through the chaos. He had never seen a battle like this, the sheer scale of destruction, the sheer fury of the enemy. But every time fear crept into him, he looked at Vala, her body glowing with fierce energy, her voice unbroken. And he found the strength to fight again amid the battle. A message echoed across the enemy fleet: "Hand over the commander, hand over the child, and we will spare your world." The words shook the defenders, some faltering, their weapons lowering. Could they really fight an endless army for one unborn child? But Vala roared back, her voice carrying like thunder, "This child is not a curse, it is a promise, and I will not betray it." Daniel stood beside her, shouting loud enough for all to hear, "You will have to kill me first." The defenders rallied, their courage ignited by his defiance. The fortress walls burned, but the people stood strong. They fought not only for survival, but for something greater. The enemy grew angrier, their ships pressing closer, their cannons tearing holes in the city. Daniel's body ached, his armor cracked, but he refused to stop. Every strike he made was for Vala. Every breath was for the unborn child. The battle became more than survival. It became a test of will, a test to prove that humanity's spirit was stronger than fear. As the night dragged on, the sky turned red from fire. The enemy fleets circled like vultures, but the fortress still stood. Vala, glowing brighter than ever, cut down wave after wave, her voice never breaking. And Daniel fought at her side, proving again that humans were not weak. They were relentless. They were stubborn, and they would not surrender, but deep inside, both knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had taken notice. And the invasion was not just against a city. It was against the idea of what the child represented. The blending of two worlds, the end of fear, the rise of something new. As the flames rose higher and the cannons thundered, Vala turned to Daniel, her voice fierce but steady. "They will not stop. Daniel, not tonight, not tomorrow. Not until the child is born." Daniel met her gaze, his voice low but unshaken. "Then let them come. Because they'll never take what's ours." And above them, the fleets prepared their next strike. The invasion was far from over, but a human and an alien stood side by side, ready to fight for a future no one else could imagine. The fortress shook under heavy fire. Explosions cracked the walls. Dust rained down from the ceilings. Flames lit the night like a second sun. Alien warriors screamed as they clashed in the courtyards, blades cutting, rifles burning, the sound of war filling every corner. Daniel fought with everything he had, his rifle spitting fire, his body bruised, his breath ragged, but even as he fought, he heard something else, something softer. A sharp cry cut through the chaos. He turned and saw Vala stumble, her hand clutching her stomach, her glowing eyes narrowing in pain. Her claws scraped against the wall as she steadied herself, her breath short, her voice trembling. "It is time," she whispered. Daniel froze, his heart slamming in his chest. "No, not now, not here," he said. But the truth was undeniable. Amid the thunder of war, the child was coming. Guards rushed forward, forming a circle around Vala, their weapons firing at enemies who tried to push through. Daniel threw himself to her side, catching her as another wave of pain hit. Her body trembled, her voice a growl. "They will not stop. Daniel, they want the child. They will tear this fortress apart to get it. Daniel gritted his teeth, his voice firm. Then let them tear. But they will never touch you. The fortress healer appeared, her hands glowing with strange alien energy. She dropped to her knees beside Vela, her voice sharp. She cannot fight. She must give birth now. Protect her or all is lost. Daniel nodded, his rifle ready, his eyes blazing. I'll protect her with my life, he swore. The enemy forces crashed harder against the gates, their cannons hammering the walls. Each strike sent tremors through the chamber. But inside, something greater trembled. Life itself was breaking. Through, Vela roared as the contractions tore through her, her body glowing brighter. The energy of her species mixing with something new. Daniel held her hand tightly, whispering, "You're stronger than them all. Vela, stronger than this war. Just breathe." The battle outside raged. The fortress shook, but within the chamber, a miracle was taking place, finally, after hours that felt like lifetimes. The cries of new life filled the room, not one cry, but many. Daniel blinked in shock as the healer lifted not one child, but 3 small glowing creatures in her arms. They were not monsters, not abominations, but tiny hybrids. Their bodies soft and strange, their eyes glowing with light. They looked like alien pups, small and innocent, yet alive with power. The guards lowered their weapons for a moment, awe filling their eyes. Even hardened warriors trembled as they looked upon the newborns. The enemy forces outside roared louder, trying to break through, but for a single heartbeat. Time itself seemed to pause. The children were here, and nothing else mattered. Daniel fell to his knees, tears stinging his eyes. He reached out with shaking hands as one of the glowing pups was placed into his arms. It looked up at him with strange bright eyes, half alien, half human. And in that moment, Daniel knew. This was not the end of his life. This was the beginning. Vela, drenched in sweat, her chest rising and falling, looked at him with a weak but fierce smile. "You see, human, this is why I fought. This is why I refused the council. This is why I chose to endure." Daniel held the child tighter, his voice breaking. "They're beautiful, Vela, they're perfect." She nodded slowly, her glowing eyes soft. "They are not just ours, Daniel. They are the future," the healer whispered in awe. "They carry power from both worlds, something never seen before." Whispers spread quickly among the guards. "The alien puppies have been born." Some said the words with fear, others with hope. But none could deny the truth. The impossible had happened. Then the gates cracked. The fortress walls shook violently. The enemy forces broke through, their roars filling the air. But as they entered the chamber, they froze. The sight of the newborns stopped them in their tracks. Even the fiercest of warriors hesitated, because in those small glowing creatures they saw something greater than conquest. Daniel rose to his feet, the child still in his arms, his voice strong. "You want them," he shouted. "Then you'll have to kill me first." Vela struggled to stand beside him, her claws sharp, her body trembling, but her voice unbroken. "No, you will never take them." Her words thundered through the chamber, silencing even the enemy for a breath. And in that silence, everyone realized the same truth. The war was no longer about land or power or conquest. It was about the children. It was about the future, and no fire, no fleet, no fear would be enough to stop it. The enemy forces stood frozen at the gates. Their weapons glowed, their voices ready to roar, but their eyes were locked on the sight before them. Commander Vela stood tall, though weak, her claws sharp, her body trembling from labor. Yet her eyes fierce. Beside her stood Daniel, a human covered in blood and ash, holding one of the newborn hybrids in his arms. And between them, the healer cradled the others, their glowing eyes shining like small stars in the smoke-filled chamber. The battlefield outside had gone silent, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The newborns let out soft cries, their strange voices echoing through the halls. They were not monsters, not curses, but something pure, something new. The invading soldiers stared, their blades lowering, their eyes wide with hesitation. Even hardened warriors could not bring themselves to strike against such innocence. Vela raised her voice, her words booming like thunder. "Look upon them, enemies. Look upon the life you came to destroy." Her eyes swept across the intruders, her voice sharp. "Do you still call them a threat? Do you still call them abominations? Or do you see what I see? Hope." Daniel stepped forward, his chest rising and falling, his voice strong, though his body ached. "You wanted war. You wanted destruction. But you cannot fight this," he said. "You cannot kill what was born tonight. Because this is bigger than fear. This is the future." His words rang through the chamber, every syllable heavy with truth. The silence of the enemy showed that deep inside they knew he was right outside. The fleets circled the skies, their cannons glowing, their engines rumbling. Commanders barked orders across the combs, demanding the attack continue. But there, soldiers hesitated. Their hands froze over the weapons, for once. Orders were not enough to push them forward. They too had heard the cries of the children. And even from afar, they felt something change. The council members who had once condemned the child arrived at the gates. Their faces were pale, their voices trembling. "This cannot be allowed." One whispered, "If these children live, everything changes." But another, staring at the newborns, whispered back, "Maybe change is what we need." The fortress guards spread the word quickly, their voices carrying to the city and beyond. "The alien puppies have been born." They cried, "Not monsters, not curses, but miracles." The people left their homes, gathering in the streets. Some prayed, some wept. But all listened to the tales spreading through the night. Vela raised one of the children high, her voice roaring for all to hear. "They are mine, they are his, and they are ours." Her words echoed across the battlefield, across the city, across the combs that carried to the skies. "Kill us if you dare, but know this: you will not kill the future." Daniel stood beside her, his voice sharp and unbroken, because the future is not built on fear. It is built on hope, and that is what they carry. He looked into the glowing eyes of the child in his arms, and for the first time since the war began, he believed the galaxy could truly change. The invading soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. Some dropped their blades entirely, their eyes unable to meet the gaze of the newborns. The commanders above shouted in fury, but their fleets wavered. Because an army may obey orders, but even armies cannot kill hope once it has taken root. The council, seeing the shift, knew the truth as well. They could no longer call the children abominations, not when their people already whispered of destiny. They could no longer call the human weak, not when he had stood and bled beside their strongest warrior. And so, for the first time, the council bowed their heads. Silent in defeat, the night that had begun in fire ended in revelation. The galaxy that had once feared the unknown now stood before it. Unable to turn away, the hybrid children were not curses, they were bridges connecting to worlds that had never understood each other. And though the future was uncertain, one truth was clear: everything had changed. Daniel and Vela stood side by side, exhausted but unbroken. She looked at him with tired eyes, a rare softness in her voice. "You have given me more than a fight. Human, you have given me a legacy." Daniel looked back at her, his voice low, and together, "We'll protect it," the newborns cried again, their voices small but powerful. The sound carried across the broken fortress, across the city, across the skies filled with silent fleets. And in that moment, the galaxy knew the war was no longer about destruction. It was about survival of something greater. It was about hope. It was about life. And it all began because one alien warrior cried for mercy and one human dared to stay.